Welcome everybody to the online Jesus table. Today is the day of the year when many Christians throughout the world are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Some of you will be familiar with the term Easter, but it is a focus on the resurrection of Jesus, which is the hope of all Christians everywhere. Without the resurrection, there is no Christianity. Well, as always, we are in person at this very moment, eating with people. We are having good conversations and just enjoying the Jesus table. And so we hope that you will enjoy the online Jesus table. We do have people on our team that would love to hear from you, that are willing to chat with you, would love to do that. So feel free to let us know if you are on. We also have a question that they are going to post, and I'm just going to ask it in just a minute here. But let's read our passage first, because we are in Matthew 6. I'm going to read verses 19 through 20, and I'll put it up on the screen for you. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. All right, so from Matthew 6. Well, the question that I want to put out to you today is this. How would you describe what Jesus meant by storing treasures up in heaven? So storing treasures up in heaven. How do you understand that? What do you believe Jesus meant by that? And we're going to be talking a little about it today. Jesus here in this passage that we read, and in many other places, deals with something that is so basic, it concerns all humans. And this is a life of generosity. Generosity is a main principle in the kingdom of God because God is generous. He cares for his creation and often withholds punishment which we deserve, but he lavishes upon us many blessings, most of all that of salvation, having an eternal home with him for as many who will trust in Jesus Christ. Generosity is a kingdom principle and does not just mean giving away resources, because we can give away resources, give away monies, and other things for many different reasons. For instance, we can give out of guilt, out of peer pressure, and so forth. We can give to make a statement, trying to drum up publicity or to show support or influence towards something. We can also give to benefit ourselves, right? For tax benefits or to look good in the eyes of others. So generosity is more than just about giving. And if those reasons I just mentioned are reasons why you gave, well, that's not kingdom generosity, nor is that storing up treasures in heaven. So Jesus' logic here in the passage that we read is very simple, right? He told us to store up treasures in heaven because earthly treasures are finite. He used the idea that they rust, moths can destroy them, thieves can steal them. And you can't take earthly treasures with you when you die. So they are left behind for someone else to enjoy. We store up treasures in heaven by living generously. This is because the root of kingdom generosity is love for God and for others. I realize that the definition of generosity, as we often describe it, is more of just like a kindness, a benevolence. And that does hint at this caring for and love for others. But kingdom generosity is definitely rooted in a love for God and others. The whole economy of God's kingdom rests upon God's love for us. And God expects no less from us who are made in his image, who have been redeemed by him. We are to love. Not a gushy, cheesy affection, but rather a love that is committed, steadfast, and righteous. This is a bold love, a robust love. In God's kingdom, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. You can still live generously because generosity, again, is about caring for others. It's about submitting to God's righteousness. This is why the widow, if you remember the story of the widow who Jesus and his disciples observed, she gave the very smallest possible amount. And Jesus commended her because out of her poverty she gave. It was very unselfish and it was a sacrificial response. This is generous living. And again, it can be done by the poorest among us, but by the richest among us. Interestingly, it's often the richest among us that struggle to live generous lives. Treasures, when we speak of treasures, those are the things that we value. And when you and I live a life that values others, we store up treasures in heaven. So if you remember the story of the Good Samaritan who nursed back to health a man who all the world would have considered his enemy. And the Good Samaritan should have considered this man his enemy too, again, as the world would view it. But he took care of his enemy. The Good Samaritan didn't see him as an enemy. He saw him as a person created in God's image. Thus, he gave of himself and his resources to care for this person. As Jesus stated, your heart, or you could say your desires and your affections, will be with whatever you consider your treasures. Now let me give a couple examples here. I know I did with the Good Samaritan, but a couple other examples here. There's a parable Jesus told about, or I'm sorry, it's not a parable. It was an actual event that happened where this very rich man came. I believe the scriptures even identify him as a young rich man. He came to Jesus wanting to be sure that he was going to be a part of God's kingdom. He wanted to be sure that he had submitted to the reign and righteousness of God. And through Jesus' discussion with this young man, this rich young person, it was discovered that this rich man had obeyed all the laws from his youth on up. Like, he was careful to obey the laws. Very moral guy. But he lacked one thing, and it was a very vital thing that he lacked. He lacked a life of generosity. He was earthly rich, but not so in the kingdom of God. The whole concept of generosity is also why Paul warns the church about idleness and makes such statements as, if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. You can find that in Paul's epistle to the church in Thessalonica. I think it's actually Timothy. I think it's Paul's words to Timothy, 2 Timothy 2:11. Actually, I don't know if I got the passage confused of where it's at. It's either in 2 Thessalonians 2:11 or 2 Timothy 2:11. So we have to look at both of those. But to be sure, rich people have been given many blessings. They've been given much, and much will be required from them, right? Generosity is expected. But generosity is not just a principle for the rich and hardworking. For those who refuse to work, who take advantage of the generosity of others, they need to look to God and consider what generosity looks like. It is good for each person to earn their own living as much as it is possible and not give themselves selfishly to idleness. So, generosity is a way of living that is others focused. Jesus also has another name for this as well. He called it being rich toward God. You can read Jesus' words as he says it's being rich toward God in Luke's Gospel 12:21. When we live generous lives, we live toward God. We live toward God. So this passage that Jesus talks about laying up treasures, storing up treasures in heaven, not here on earth, is really about living a generous life that is others focused. And that's all part of generosity. Next week, we are going to further see what a life of generosity looks like in the kingdom of God as we continue looking at Jesus' words. So, again, love being with you, and hopefully, you are enjoying just walking through the words of Jesus, talking about what he was speaking to us and how what he said 2,000 years ago has such application for us even today. And of course, Jesus is speaking to us today still. His Spirit is still giving us understanding of what he said and bringing about a fullness of knowledge and a fullness of his kingdom and in us and around us. All right, great being with you. Look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.